Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Windsor, and this is Lady. Come on in our home.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. My name is Windsor, and welcome to my home in North Carolina. I actually grew up right here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, but after college, I moved to Boston, had my first job in Boston, then lived in LA for a few years, and during COVID, moved, kind of begrudgingly actually, moved back to North Carolina. I would cry to my husband and say I'd rather be dead in California than alive in North Carolina, but I now have eaten those words because I have come to appreciate it so much more than I did growing up here as a kid. I really love the East Coast, and North Carolina is still the furniture capital of the world. So for me, business-wise, it's amazing to be here and be so close to the furniture industry. But yeah, so I actually now live about 10 minutes from where I grew up, and where we are has changed so much in the last few years, and it feels like an entirely new space. But I always tell people North Carolina is kind of like the perfect hybrid of a place to live. You get all four seasons, you're close to New York, you're close to Florida, you're close to the mountains, you're close to the beach. So we get a little taste of everything here, and I really love it. This is our kind of formal living room and entryway all combined, or foyer all combined in one. So one of the reasons that I love this house when I purchased it, even though this house does not have super high ceilings, this room felt very grand to me. And again, why I loved it is because this was original to the build of the house. So when you kind of walk through the flow, I really just fell in love with how all of these rooms open up to each other. And all of these archways are actually original. They say the devil catches you in the corners, so the more arches you can have, the better. But this room only has one major window in here. So we did the walls white to kind of brighten it up in here, but I wanted it to still feel very earthy, moody, and warm. So we did some kind of dramatic pops of color. So we have this really oversized green velvet sectional that I actually had custom made in LA. It's a super comfortable couch, even though we rarely sit on it. So I have this very dramatic brass coffee table in here, and I love the ambered glass. To me, that's such a fun element to bring into any design space. And you'll notice throughout my entire home, I am obsessed with coffee table books. I collect them. You name a coffee table book, I probably have at least one copy, if not two. But this Elvis coffee table book is actually one of my prized possessions. So this is a very limited edition. I think they only made 1,000 copies, maybe 10,000 copies. But it's so oversized, and I feel like it's really just such an iconic piece to have in anyone's house. So this is a very coveted special piece to me that I'll always keep prevalent in any home that we're in. All right, I think Lady is tired of being on camera, so I'm gonna put you down. One thing you'll also kind of notice throughout this house, I also have a love and appreciation for kind of, I don't know if you wanna call it like Africana safari vibes, but I really love like animalistic influence. These were actually gifted to me by a design firm that I used to work with. But as soon as I saw these, I fell in love with them. The movement, the color scheme, everything about them to me is so dramatic and just interesting, and I feel like they really pop well on this coffee table. I'm all about a high and low moment, and if you follow me on social media, you'll recognize this rug. So this was one of my first extremely viral videos. I found this rug on Amazon, and this is an 11 by 15, which normally for rugs this size, you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars or having to order them custom. But I came across this Amazon seller that was selling these for like $500 for an 11 by 15. It is just a jute rug, but for the scale of this room, I really needed something large. And kind of one of my, ways that I was able to increase my design business was through promoting things on social media. And this was one of my first videos that went really viral. So I found this rug on here and was telling my followers about how this is a great way to have a really elevated and high-end look for a very low price point. And I talk to people a lot about, I call it the island effect, when your rug is too small and it feels like all your furniture is stuck on a little island. Having a nice big area rug like this just makes the space feel open, and it just gives room for every piece of furniture to breathe and stand on its own. And especially for a big, long room like this, it makes a huge difference in just what your eye is going to and how the overall aesthetic looks. So one thing you'll notice, we have a lot of neutrals in here, but I like to kind of bring visual interest into the neutrals with texture. And then you'll also notice I'm a huge, huge fan of sculptural elements. So there's only so many pieces of art that you can put in a house, like canvas art. So I love sculptures. I think every piece of sculpture, like a face, a body, anything figurative just has so much personality. This little cocktail table here, I just love the texture and the dimension that it brings. So this is from Mr. Brown, London, which is one of my favorite brands to work with. It's a trade-only brand out of High Point, North Carolina. But I love how it makes these pieces pop. And even though the chair is white, this cocktail table is white, I feel like all these pieces come to life with the texture. And then we have this really oversized sculptural piece here that I actually added a light behind. It did not come with a light, but I just wrapped some LED lights behind it to kind of give it a nice glow so it almost feels like an oversized sconce. Some of our friends call this the tortilla sculpture because I guess it looks like a tortilla, but I absolutely love it. And again, it's like, this is a really big room. How many pieces of art are we gonna put on every wall? So this breaks it up, it adds dimension, and it just adds a cool pop of interest into the space. And again, talking about the highs and lows. So this console, I'm a huge fan of Burlwood. This console is actually from Target. It's a Studio McGee console, but I've layered it in with a Branch Home light fixture, again, that's sculptural. And this lamp is a very high-end fixture made of solid marble, with some really beautiful custom drapes, and of course another collector's coffee table book, because you know I love my coffee table books. So this is actually the original mantle that came with the house. But before we had like the big glass doors on the front of the fireplace, this mantle was painted white. We kept the original stone, but I wanted to do something again like sculptural and contemporary with the actual fireplace itself. So when I saw these like cement spheres online, I thought this is one of the perfect ways to kind of spice up this room. And I love, with all of these sharp lines we have in here, to have the soft curves with these cement spheres. I think it's really beautiful, and it just adds a little layer of personality and something that's different in a home of this age. This is probably the most special piece in this entire house. So this piece of art is, I believe it's a 55 by 55. It's very large scale, and it's actually painted on wood. It's extremely heavy, and it's all done in oils. But just to set the scene for you, when I very first moved to LA, I was on a shoestring budget, and I got taken to this store by an old colleague of mine where she called it the dead people store, but it was really like a consignment store, and it was all of these like celebrity homes, or just like, I guess, influential people's homes they would donate, and all of the money of the pieces sold goes to a children's charity. But it was like a hoarder's antique shop, like floor to ceiling stacked. And I walked in, and from across the room, I saw this piece. And I'm a Scorpio. I love scary movies, anything scary. And the second I saw this face, I was like, I have to own this. Like, I absolutely love this piece. They had no information about who painted it, where it came from, like absolutely anything. But I fell in love with it. At the time, this cost more than my monthly rent. So I went home, called my parents. I was like, I can't afford this. What do I do? And my parents were like, you're on your own now. You got to figure it out. So I decided I would rather eat ramen noodles for a month and not have a lot of extra spending money and splurge on this piece. And the colleague I went with at the time, I remember she told me, she said, this will be one of those pieces that you can say, when I first moved to Beverly Hills, I bought this piece of art, and she was like, you'll have this for the rest of your life. One of the biggest reasons that I love it is that everyone that looks at this piece sees a different story, and it evokes something different out of every person. And on top of that, the color scheme is my just love of these muted greens and browns, and it works so well with the rest of our house. So this is one of my collector's items. Like if the house was on fire, I'm grabbing this and running out the door. This console is not only beautiful, again, I love adding in texture when you have neutrals. It's also super functional. It adds a ton of storage. And then these are, again, we're looking at a high-low. I have this vintage, it's vintage-esque, it's new, but it's from HomeGoods. This bread bowl is like $30 paired with these really beautiful lamps by Bunny Williams. Bunny Williams to me is, just a tastemaker when it comes to lighting design. But one thing that I tell clients all the time is that the scale of your lamps is really so important. And I go in people's houses all the time and they have these tiny little lamps on their buffets or their consoles or their entry tables. And I wanted something that was really large scale, had some visual interest, but wasn't going to take away from this art piece. So when I saw these, I really love them. To me, they're the perfect amount of kind of like elegance and sophistication. They also lean a little bit more traditional to be paired with this super modern cabinet here. But these, again, are just another great way to incorporate kind of like a high-low investment piece. To me, lamps are so versatile. These would be great anywhere in the house, no matter where you use them. And black shades are actually a little unpopular in the design world, I feel like. But I love them, especially in here with all of these white walls. To me, it adds a great amount of contrast. And I like it moody, I like it dark, so I don't need tons of light pouring out from these fixtures. This home was built in 1947. And I actually just told my husband the other day, we were looking at some of the original listing photos, and I was like, I'm glad we were young when we bought this because we had a lot of energy to take on the amount of projects that we did. But I like to say it was abandoned. It was left vacant for 6 years prior to us purchasing it. The previous owners, I guess, retired out of state. So everything was overgrown, outdated, needed love and attention, but it was prime COVID. We had nothing to do. It was the middle of winter. We were moving from LA and we thought, you know what, let's take on this huge project and we'll do a lot of this ourselves, which was a little naive in hindsight. So when we bought this home, it was not painted. The exterior was not painted. Every room was painted a different color. The kitchen was probably one of the worst kitchens I've ever been in my life, and we lived with that kitchen for about 4 years until we just recently renovated it. But what I loved about this home is that it was built in the 40s, and most homes in this neighborhood from that time period are very chopped up. So they have lots of small rooms, lots of formal living rooms, dining rooms, chopped up bedrooms, closets, things like that. This house just naturally has a really great flow. We did not disrupt any walls. We still have not moved any walls or openings. Everything is original. And this is kind of like a Tudor-esque cottage style house, which is one of my favorite styles of home. I'm a very like cozy, warm type of personality. So to me, the layout and the aesthetic of this house just matches really well with my personality. We got in here and, painted everything, replaced the light fixtures, and just got the bare bones kind of covered. And then slowly throughout the last few years, we've taken on kind of room by room, project by project to help make it feel more like our own. And in my personal design style, and what I urge a lot of clients to do is have a mix of like modern elements from current design trends, but also old world and traditional elements. And I feel like, especially in an older house, it's really important to pay homage. Like our kitchen, for example, I would not have wanted to put a super modern kitchen in this house because it's an old home. Like in 20 years, this house is going to be almost 100 years old. So I would not have wanted to put a super modern kitchen in this house because it just doesn't fit with the bones. So the thought process behind all of the design choices in here have been, we want the structural elements and the architectural elements to feel original and traditional to this era, but some of the furniture and art and accessories can feel, modern and contemporary. And, we're a young gay couple living in North Carolina, so we want it to feel like it's different, it's edgy, it's cool, and it reflects our personal style. But I don't want to take away from the beautiful design elements that were originally created for this home. We don't really use this room unless it's the formal living room, unless it's for parties or something. But day to day, this little sunroom is where we're spending all of our hangout time after work, relaxing and watching TV. So I always tell people TVs are like the quickest way to ruin the aesthetic of a room. I do love a good frame TV. I think that's a great compromise. But in general, I don't like to have a room framed around a TV. I think the room should be framed around the architectural elements. So a fireplace, your view, or kind of like a conversation pit. So when I saw this little unique TV, so this is by Samsung. It's called the Seraph. It's meant to look like mid-century furniture. So it has these legs and it only has one cord. So you can literally just pick it up, move it wherever you want. But I fell in love with this because it's the perfect piece to kind of stay out of the way, but still be functional. It's a great quality TV. But this is where we're doing 99% of our hanging out and relaxing. And in this room, it's great because if you're laying in here on a Saturday, you kind of feel like you're outside with all of these huge windows. So you don't necessarily feel guilty about being inside all day. But I think this room is a really good representation of kind of my overall style and that mix of traditional form with kind of like modern and contemporary elements. So we have a pretty modern sofa here. This trunk, funny story, was actually the first office I ever worked in. This was our coffee table in my very first office in Boston. And when the company closed, the owner gave me this coffee table, and I actually packed this, duct taped this shut, shipped it from Boston to California, filled with like my coffee table books, blankets, pillows, all this stuff, like literally just slapped a FedEx label on it and then shipped it back from California to North Carolina. So God knows where it was before this, but it has literally been across the country and back. So I always like to incorporate this into the house. But again, so I have kind of a mix in here. We have like a more contemporary rug. I have a modern side table here. And then paired with this is an actual vintage Herman Miller mid-century modern Eames chair, and this is from the late 1950s. I purchased this from a really close family friend. This was their grandfather's. He bought it new in the late 50s. We've never had it refinished or anything. I love all the wear and tear and character it has on it, and it's actually just the most comfortable chair in the world. So I know some people say the Eames chair is overdone or, you know, it's too predictable, but I love it. It's so comfortable to watch TV. And again, I love that this is an older piece mixed in with some of these more contemporary and modern elements. This sheep is a really good, another story, if I'm not boring you guys with my stories, but this is a good retrospect into my like admiration for the furniture and design industry. So there was a furniture company called Mitchell Gold Bob Williams for a really long time. They were out of Hickory, North Carolina. They unfortunately closed in the last couple years just due to some crazy circumstances, but their logo was this sheep. That was what they were known for, and in every display, they had these sheep. So when I was in LA, Mitchell Gold had a showroom in Beverly Hills, and I would go, you know, look at all these pieces, and I always just loved the sheep. Fast forward to living in North Carolina, I was at one of the closing sales when the company was going out of business, and they had their full display for sale, and I was with my mom, and we were asking them like, hey, everything, they were selling everything. So we were like, hey, are you guys gonna sell these displays of the sheep? And they were like, yeah, we can. So they sold me this, and I just love it. To me, it's just an unpredictable piece. Again, I love sculptural elements into a space. Behind this is a light fixture, kind of a funky little floor lamp by Regina Andrew. She's one of my go-to lighting sources when it comes to clients, but this was just a really cool take to me on adding in floor lighting into a space. They call this the happy lamp because it looks like a little smile with two eyes, I guess. But it's just, again, a fun, unexpected sculptural element in this space that I feel like just kind of helps make the room more interesting, and it adds character and shape. Another one of my favorite, I guess this is, now that I'm saying this out loud, you'll notice lighting is just like one of my go-tos. But another favorite light piece I have in here is this table lamp. So this is a great example, again, of incorporating sculptural elements. So this is Kelly Wersler for visual comfort. Kelly is like God to me. I love everything she does. But I saw this lamp, I thought it was so beautifully done. And this to me is a great combination of the earthy tone. It's warm, it's cozy, but it has this crazy modern sculptural element to it. And again, it's very large scale. We're always looking for those really big lamps. I'm a nature person, so for me, it's so refreshing to be able to come in here and just kind of like, I don't feel like we do this enough as adults, to just kind of like daydream, not look at your phone, just look out the window, look at the nature. Here in North Carolina, we have all these beautiful season changes. Look at the seasons and just kind of like appreciate life for 10 minutes in the morning. So that's what I really like this room for. And when we bought this house, it was crazy. They had this whole room was painted like Masters green, like the Masters golf course or the Masters golf tournament green. And they had huge blinds covering all the windows. The bushes were very overgrown, but we came in here and they had like a sofa and two recliners in here, and we were kind of like, like, this is not, whatever, this is a little bonus room, like, maybe we'll make this a sitting room or something. And when we closed on the house and we came in here, we started taking the blinds down. And we were just like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing space. Like these windows, the light, everything, which originally to this house, this was like probably a screened in porch, and one of the previous owners glassed it in. But it's just such a special little room. And in here, because it's sunken, the ceiling height is a little higher. So it feels very grand and open between the ceiling height and the windows. So we spend, I would say, like 80% of our free time hanging out in here. Growing up here in North Carolina, which is the furniture capital of the world, I was exposed to furniture and interiors kind of all the time unknowingly. My mom worked for an interior design firm our whole life, and she was also a very like hands-on DIY project type of mom. I would come downstairs. I remember actually one morning I came downstairs and she literally had a sledgehammer, was going through our drywall to put a new window into our kitchen because she wanted more light in there. So that's the level of DIY that she was, like always taking on projects. I think our house was constantly under construction my whole life. But again, like begrudgingly, she drugged me to all these fabric stores my whole life and furniture stores, and I never really appreciated how much I was exposed to until I got older. But I actually started off in marketing. So I worked for a long time in digital marketing, social media, and all that kind of stuff. And then during COVID, I really wanted a new creative outlet. And I always had just had a love for interiors. We were living in California at the time, in LA. And I worked really hard on our apartment there to make it beautiful and feel like home. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna start showcasing this apartment during COVID because I had so much extra time to do things. So I started showcasing the apartment more and more on Instagram. As time went on, things started picking up more and more traction. I started taking on small jobs here and there, taking on jobs for family and friends. Everything just kind of started snowballing to where I slowly just started getting 100% into interior design. And then that kind of snowballed into also selling, antiques and home decor pieces online. I source these pieces from all over the world. So like this fall, I'm actually going to Paris on a buying trip to sell pieces on my website. But it just kind of happened really naturally, which I think was probably the best thing for me because I was never a student and I never did well in school. And I think that had I studied design in school, I would have resented the schoolwork aspect of design and maybe not found my passion for it as I have now. So it really just kind of came to be over the course of 1 to 2 years. It just fell into place. And now being here in North Carolina, I can go to High Point Market every season. I bring clients to market, and then throughout the year, I have access to be able to go there, every week to find really cool and unique pieces for my clients. And to me, even as a kid, whether it was decorating my room or, styling the Christmas tree, your home is the most important place in your life. It's your retreat, and it's the space where you can recharge and express yourself. And to me as a creative person, that's one of the most important things, in your day-to-day life. So creating beautiful interiors with people is just like magic to me. It's one of my favorite things to do. And finding that synergy with clients is just like a dream come true for that to be my day job. All right, so I want to take you guys into the dining room. So outside of the sunroom, whenever we're hosting company, I love to have a dinner party and I love to decorate for a dinner party. So we utilize this dining room a lot. You will actually notice I have not had it fixed and I've not changed it out. This dining table top is kind of like beat to smithereens from all of the different decorations and candles and plates and everything that's come across it. But I leave it this way because to me, this is reminiscent of all the wonderful times that we've had in here. But again, this dining room, the layout and everything is original to the house. So we have not moved walls or anything. We did add this really beautiful grass cloth wallpaper here. Grass cloth is one of my go-tos when you're looking to add a little bit of warmth and texture without, having I feel like wallpaper you can very easily get sick of, and in a room this big, I wanted something that we were not going to get sick of. So this to me was a perfect neutral. It adds just enough interest, but without being too crazy. So again, I think you'll notice in this room, it's a good mix of traditional and kind of modern. So we have this very oversized pendant. This is another Kelly Wearstler piece. And again, why I love this is because it's so sculptural and dramatic, and it really helps balance out a lot of the other more traditional elements in the room. So having the wallpaper from the chair railing up, we have pretty formal drapery panels in here. A lot of it is very formal, so I wanted it to have a little bit of funk when it came to the furniture pieces and accessories, and even down to the rug. So this rug is from Jaipur Living. They're one of my favorite rug manufacturers, and what I love about this rug is that this is a very classic and kind of like old world traditional design, but it's been done in a very modern and dramatic colorway. I always say you need a little punch of black in every room, so this adds a really dramatic base into this room. These chairs were actually purchased when I lived in California. You'll probably notice this throughout the tour of this home. I'm an emotional buyer, so I see things, I don't know where it's gonna go yet, but I have an emotional connection to it and I fall in love with them. These were one of those pieces. I found these at a really cool shop in LA. And I was like, I had a tiny apartment at the time. I was like, I have nowhere to put these. I don't know what to do with them, but I love them. They're solid teak, and I just love how sculptural they are. And to me, this does lead itself to a little more of those kind of like Africana vibes that I'm drawn to. But I saw these, and when we were moving in, I said, let's just put them at the dining table for now. We don't have any other chairs. And we put them up against this table, and I was like, I kind of love this. And very surprisingly, these are extremely comfortable, believe it or not, even though they look extremely rigid. But I didn't want the rest of the chairs to overwhelm these. So the rest of the pairing is more of kind of like a mid-century upholstered, lower profile dining chair. Again, these are super comfortable. And I love that we're able to fit so many people at this dining table because, again, we like to host and have friends over. And this table is great because it does have an option to put a leaf in it so we can get 2 extra chairs. Being here in North Carolina with furniture market and the antique market, we do have access to a lot of pieces. But anytime I travel, I'm always looking for art and accessories, whether that's California, Europe, anywhere I go, I'm always trying to look for those pieces. There's a brand online, Kathy Kuo, and she says your home should look like a well-traveled home. And I remember reading that and thinking that is such a good explanation of how you want your home to feel because it helps tell a story. So I do plan specific trips to go shopping, but I always tell people when it comes to art and accessories, those pieces a lot of times need to find you. Like just how I've mentioned with several of the art pieces in here or sculptures, they've kind of just unexpectedly found me and I fell in love with them. That's how I think art should be because it's very personal. So whether it's, a candlestick, a sculpture, a vase, or a piece of art, I think those are the pieces that when you're out somewhere, whether it's traveling or at an antique market, if something jumps out at you, even if you don't have a place for it, just grab it because that means there's something there that's tying into a personal element for you. And that's how I've really curated this home. Like I said, half of these pieces I didn't have a plan for. I just fell in love with them, and then I start to base a plan around them. And that's also why I like old houses. Like, I like having the challenge of, this is the puzzle piece or this is the board game that you're set up with. So how do you figure this out rather than having everything new and customized for exactly what you want? I like working around the history a little bit. So the Linwood pieces, they're part of a brand called South and English, the cabinet in our living room is actually from South and English, but it's a couple, the husbands, one is from England, one is from Georgia. So South is South from Georgia, and he is the artist. So these abstract pieces he is very famous for, and you see them a lot in like Charleston, definitely all over North Carolina, but I absolutely love his work. So when I saw both of these, I knew they had to come back to our house. Out of that, and the art in here is also kind of, I think, kind of an unexpected and special little twist. So these are both by a local artist. He goes by the name of Linwood out of High Point, but these pieces, even though they are so dramatically different, they're both done by the same artist, and we had them framed in the same material. And I don't have a lot of blue in this house, but this is kind of my one little pop of blue that I have in here. Again, both of these pieces really spoke to me, and even though I don't think you would look at them and say they should go together, I just loved them paired in this dining room. And when you walk in from the front door, this piece is one of the first pieces that your eye sees. And I think it's really cool. It kind of just makes the room come together for me. Over on the other side of the dining table, I have a little bit more of, I would say, kind of like an old world flair over here. So this piece I actually found at an antique store. I took it to an appraiser to just get some more information out of it. It's extremely, extremely old, I think from the late 1700s. The glass and frame is both original, and the back is solid wood, and the wood is very deteriorated, and you can tell the age of it. But I've paired it here with a more modern console, and then this antique solid brass lamp that I think is just a really special kind of like, cool way to pay homage to this old world aesthetic. I have one of my sculptures here from my website, and then kind of changing from antique to like Grecian Roman vibes to, again, a little bit more of that funky kind of like Africana vibe. So this is kind of like a good encapsulation, I feel like, of my style, is just mixing in all these different elements in a more neutral color palette and making them all kind of have a moment for themselves, but somehow come together to create something special and beautiful as one. I'm a shopper, so I think that's a big part of being a good designer, is being a good shopper or having a love and patience for shopping. I could shop for furniture, antiques, and accessories all day long. I never get tired of it. So I want to take you guys now into the extremely newly renovated kitchen. And when I say new, I mean that we had contractors in here last night finishing up a few last minute details. But the before of this kitchen, so we did not change the footprint in here, but it was taken down to the stud. So everything before was original. So cabinets from the 40s, we had 2 layers of linoleum floors in here. Formica countertops, it was terrible. So that's why we wanted to wait a little bit, live in the space, see how we wanted to use it, and really figure out what it was we wanted out of a kitchen, because this is such a huge investment. Every detail needed to be perfect. So we just finished this up, and I could not be happier with this kitchen. To me, it makes this house finally feel like a home. In here, I think, again, you'll notice that mix of modern and traditional elements together. So we went for a very classic style shaker cabinet. I did all unlacquered brass hardware. You'll notice on the fridge, these are already starting to patina and change, which I love. I cannot wait for these to look old and worn. And I wanted the beauty of marble in here. So the countertops here, as well as the full backsplash, is all a honed Brazilian marble. There's so many beautiful marbles, and I've seen a million pictures on Instagram and in other people's homes of beautiful, colorful marble. But again, with the investment level, I wanted this to feel classic and timeless. And I wanted this to also feel like this could have been something that was selected for this kitchen back in the 40s. So we went with this, very classic marble. In the detail though, it does pick up some of the green in the veining, but because marble is a little bit more sensitive and high maintenance, we wanted something practical for the island. The island is actually a leathered quartzite, and the leathered, it gives it this really beautiful texture, so you can actually feel the veining here and feel the difference in the stone. But this is super tough. You can, put your plates, dishes on it, pots and pans, anything like that, and you're not gonna hurt it. I also love, again, the punch of black in here. I think this adds a great contrast into the space. This island we modeled after a few islands that we saw in person in magazines and took inspiration from, of this looking like a furniture piece. So I love the idea of this almost feeling like a big cabinet or something that was, again, brought in the 40s to be functional. And we carried in that unlacquered brass hardware all throughout these cabinets here. So because we did paneled appliances, so paneled fridges are, you lose a few inches, they're not that deep. We actually added in a little mini fridge here because we drink a lot of seltzers. And don't even start to make fun of me, store brand seltzer. I drink a lot of seltzer, and I'm telling you, store brand seltzer is my favorite. So don't come for me for having the store brand. But we added a little mini fridge in here just for additional beverage storage, so we didn't have to take that up with the fridge. But that was a big piece of this kitchen because we did not change the footprint, and this isn't a huge kitchen. We needed it to be hyper functional. So every nook and cranny has been thought out to be as functional and optimized for storage as possible. I want to show you guys a couple of my favorite little details that I think make a huge difference as far as storage. So one thing that's becoming popular now is doing a knife drawer. So rather than having your knife block on the countertop, all my knives can go in here. They just go into this little kind of like foamy material, and they just go straight down. And it also has a little pail in the back for spatulas, and then some surface area below if you want to put olive oil, cutting boards, things like that. But that's a great way to kind of keep those out of the way. Our hood here is actually done in a custom plaster that we then painted over. But I wanted that texture in here, and I think, again, this is part of the kind of mix and style. So the form of this is super sleek, super modern, and contemporary, but it has this old world texture to it that I think feels very true to the house. Now, if you're one of those like Khloe Kardashian cookie jar lovers or an OCD lover, I have a treat for you. So my spice drawer, we use a lot of spices, and I wanted this to be absolutely perfect. So I have this built-in spice drawer here with all of the coordinating spices. And what I love about this is it just is so aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it's also super functional. So on the functionality standpoint, the coffee bar, I think, is a really interesting setup. So when we were talking to our builders about this little station, so again, this is all the original footprint. Previously, where this wall was behind, we had 2 chairs and a little like bistro table, which no one ever sat at. It was just like a catch-all. And we had everything in this back corner before, like coffee, wine glasses, everything. So we said, let's move everything over here, get it out of the way. And we noticed too, like when we would have guests over spending the night or anything, everyone would get clumped up in the morning trying to get coffee. So we were like, let's get this as far away as possible and removed and have it be its own little space. But in that thinking, the sink is on the total opposite side of the kitchen. We're big Nespresso fans, so we're always having to fill up this little water pod here. So we thought, why not add, the first thought was like, maybe we should add in a sink. We really didn't have, as you can see, the counter space for a sink. And I saw this, it's again, unlacquered brass pot filler online. And I thought this would be such a cool way to like rethink a pot filler rather than having one over your range. So now with this pot filler, you can just bring this over, turn this on, and fill up our little pod here. And I know this is definitely like a first world problem of something that is not necessary, but to me it adds in a beautiful little aspect, and it's something that's just different. One of the biggest structural changes that we made in here was enlarging the size of this window. So previously, I would say the window that was above this, the old sink was here, but the window that was above the sink was probably a third of the size. And again, we're looking out onto all these beautiful trees and we have this great private view. So I was like, this needs to be as big as possible. So we went as far up and wide as we could for this window just to make this feel totally open. I did these super modern flush mounts up here from Buster and Punch. And what I wanted was whatever we had here to stop right before the face of the window trim so that nothing infiltrated your view to the outside. And of course, we went with a nice big farm sink. I don't know how people live without these. To me, this is just the most functional thing you can do for a sink, whether you're washing pots and pans or just doing normal dishes. You have so much more room than any other style sink. And then we paired it with this really beautiful old world faucet. And I did the faucet in a polished nickel only because I could not find this style of faucet that I wanted with a sprayer in an unlacquered brass. One other detail I wanted to point out in this kitchen. So you'll notice right here in the corner, as well as this corner here. So when we were talking about the finishing of the countertops, you know, sometimes people just leave this blank, sometimes people do a square. I'd seen this beautiful kitchen with all of this custom carved marble, and I thought that could be a really cool element to add into here. Again, this isn't a large kitchen, so we only have 2 end reveals in the entire kitchen. So we decided to carve this out with a double carving and kind of like a scalloped edge on both sides. And I think this adds, I wanted this kitchen to kind of feel, again, true to our house, kind of like an old English cottage or something. And to me, this adds in like a very European old world element in here that I think will be really timeless with this home. You'll notice I'm not like a huge fan of tons of color in here, but I am a huge fan of vintage Turkish rugs. I kind of collect them actually. It's same with like artwork. When I see them, I jump on them. So this one I bought years and years ago from someone that collected vintage rugs themselves and was selling this. And again, it was not planned to go in here. Actually, during the end of the construction process, they had just refinished our floors, and I was like, I need to find a rug in here for everyone walking in and out just to keep, you know, scuff marks and that kind of thing. So I found this in the closet and I rolled it out here and thought, that's perfect, we'll put it here. And then as the rest of the painting came together and all of that, I actually loved the color scheme in here. So I decided to keep it. This is a pretty large opening here, so I do feel like it helps kind of ground the space. And then again, with all of these like, you know, modern fixtures and appliances, I think it brings a little bit of that old world element in here. And then another element that this was actually, even as a designer, this was a huge, huge struggle for me. So this door opens out. So we had very limited space to what we could fit here when it came to counter stools. You know, I looked high and low at every brand that I work with. I just could not find the right thing. I came across these and fell in love with them. I think the wood tone to me, I love how complementary it is to our floors in here. And again, like our dining chairs, these are actually shockingly comfortable. I sit in these. Sometimes I bring my laptop in here. I'll sit in these for hours at a time. They are very comfortable. And even though they are a more contemporary shape and kind of form, I think that the elements between this distressed leather and the light wood tone, it really makes it feel warm and homey still. And I think it helps balance out this really dramatic island. This used to be just a regular door frame here, and we added in this archway to match the rest of the existing archways. But when we were choosing the paint colors and the wallpaper, I loved how this framed out this little vignette of this new powder bath. So the wall color to this wallpaper in the powder bath were very complementary to each other. And I wanted it to be like a little sneak peek to spark your interest to maybe come in here. So this powder room was just recently renovated. And this actually used to be the entrance to the downstairs bathroom as well as a linen closet. But because this house only had 2 bathrooms, we wanted to utilize the space and create a powder bath. And because this isn't really that large of a space, I had to get a little creative with some of the design choices. So I chose this oak tree mural, which I think is just beautiful. You go in here and it just kind of like takes you into a whole nother world. Like I think the the visual aspect of it is just so dramatic. And again, staying true to our area and the time period, we have big, beautiful oak trees all around. So I love that this kind of pays homage to that. And then in here, I found this marble sink. So this is actually a solid piece of marble that they carve out from remnant marble. And believe it or not, I actually found this on Etsy. It's shipped from Turkey, so I was a little scared when I saw it online that like, maybe this is gonna come and it's gonna be this big or a toy or like who knows what. But I was like, I'm gonna take the risk and go for it. So I got it. This is only 20 inches wide, so we needed something really small to fit in here with the door opening. And I love how the veining in this marble almost feels like a continuation of the wild branches from the tree. We did a wall-mounted faucet, and then this is actually an antique picture frame that I found with a piece of art in it, and I saved the piece of art, so don't worry about that. But saved the piece of art, took the art out, and replaced it with a mirror. Um, the size again here was really, really tough. I had to look high and low to find a mirror that fit here. And then for the light fixture, this is actually a new piece from Arteriors, but again, I wanted to kind of pay homage to the wild kind of natural feeling in here. So I did this kind of branch-like feature, and I think between the sink and the light fixture, it helps kind of balance out this really, dramatic wallpaper. And I think this adds a little bit of that flair of the modern and contemporary again into something that feels very ornate and traditional. The trim in here is Mouse's Back by Farrow and Ball, which is a complementary color to our cabinet. So since you can see this from our kitchen, I wanted everything to kind of flow together. And the ceiling is Slipper Satin by Farrow and Ball, which is the same ceiling color that we have in the kitchen as well. Both very kind of just like warmer, creamy tones, and they pulled from this wallpaper perfectly. But while we were, going through the construction process, I would bring wallpaper samples and paint samples into the kitchen at all different times of day because I wanted to make sure that everything really flowed well together. And that all these colors are working together to make this space feel really cohesive. So right outside of the powder bath in my hallway, I have art everywhere throughout this house. I'm like an art junkie, but so this piece at the top, when I lived in LA, I would go to the West Hollywood flea market. I can't remember what they called it, but there was this guy there. He's very eccentric, very unique, and he drew this woman in all different shapes and sizes. This frame was his framing, everything he chose. And I went up to him and I was like, I love this. Can I please purchase it? Most of these vendors like took credit cards and that type of thing. And he was only taking cash. And I don't remember what it was, $120 or something. And I said, I only have $100. Could I Venmo you? Like, can I do whatever? And he got like super mad at me and was like, forget it. I'm not selling it to you. You can't have her. And he tells me her whole story. He says, her name is Karina. She's been disappointed by men her whole life, and gives me this whole background, this like very eccentric artist, which made me fall in love with the piece even more. Because I think like anytime someone's like a little bit wild, I'm like, I want to buy your art. But so he gives me this whole thing, and then I'm like, I'm going to go get cash. I'll come back. I bring back $120. And he's like, I'm not going to sell it to you for $120. He's like, she's very sensitive and she didn't like everything that we just went through. So I don't want to sell it to you anymore. And I was begging him. I'm like, now I have to have it. I'm like, please, I'll give you $300, like whatever it takes. So he was a cool guy. He ended up selling it to me. But I feel like she has such a cool energy. I will never reframe this piece because he chose the frame with her. I think all art has energy, and I think it, like, whenever it has a story like that and someone had such strong emotion connected with it, that's what makes it special. So she has always been in my home, and I think she just is a great conversation piece and very sophisticated. But that brings us into this guest bedroom. So right when you walk in, you'll see this Gucci scarf that I had framed. And this was actually just kind of a fluke. I was on The RealReal one day. They had this on there super cheap. I think it was like $50 or $60 on a sale. And I just loved it. So I thought, you know what, why not buy it, frame it? It's a great little vignette right when you walk in here. But you come into this guest bedroom, and this again is kind of like a continuation of the color palette and aesthetic from the rest of the house. So we have this very kind of proper poster bed frame, but I've mixed it with some mid-century pieces, some modern sculptural pieces. The lamps in here are very sculptural, and then a lot of textures. So we have like hide pillows, velvet pillows, Turkish rugs that have been cut up into pillows. And then of course I love a good heavy drapery panel. Even though we have the plantation shutters in here, I always tell people drapes or curtains to me are kind of like your eyebrows on your face. Like they help frame everything out. And when you add them in here, it just helps balance the room so much. Again, this room does not get a lot of light, so we did go with a Chantilly lace white wall in here, but I think adding in these heavy drapery panels warms it up, and with all of these tones in here, it still feels really warm and cozy. So these are actually, again, actual mid-century chairs. So these are from the 1950s. My mom and I were out antique shopping one day, and we saw these. The wood stain and the brass caps on the feet are all original. The upholstery was in a little bit of a rough go. So we found some beautiful fabric, had them reupholstered, and now they're back to their original glory. And with these, almost every room in this house, actually all the bedrooms, it's very hard to style because most rooms you're gonna have a window, two windows like on each wall, giving you symmetry, and then you'd put like a cabinet or something in the middle. Almost every room in this house, we have one large window that is centered. So you kind of have to balance out what's on the left and the right side. So here was really easy with two chairs, a table here, you know, it feels leveled out and everything. Over here, I kind of had to get a little creative with the bench and this chair. It took a while to find a chair that was the right scale and size for here. So that was a little bit of a design challenge, but I'm one of those people too, with whether it's artwork or accessories, kind of like a more is more sometimes. So I've layered in a ton of different styles of art. I have, you know, French posters, antique oil paintings, a French shield here. Some of my husband paints in his free time. We have some of his abstracts here. And then again, tons of coffee table books that just kind of give it a little bit of warmth and character. So this bedding is all from Nate Home. So Nate Berkus is a huge inspiration to me. And these are some of his pieces from his bedding line that's very affordable. He's actually reposted this bed a couple times on his page. But I love that this linen, again, they're all neutral, but it has interesting texture. And I layered it here with one of my custom lumbar pillows. So I make these for clients, I sell them online, but I love these big oversized lumbar pillows just to make your bed still feel finished, but I can't stand when people have like a million decorative pillows on their bed that all night you're having to move everything off the bed. This way you just really have one or two on here. It makes a big impact, and it makes bed making just way more simplified. This side table, it actually opens up, which I don't know if I want to show what's in there, but this actually opens up. It has storage. But this again was just, I bought this before we even purchased this house. I found it at an antique store. Again, had no plan for it, no idea where it was gonna go, fell in love with it. The wood detail, the staining, everything is so beautiful. It weighs about 1,000,000 pounds, but we got it in here and it fits perfectly in this space. This I bought once we were in North Carolina, but like I said, our house and my apartments, anywhere, it has always kind of been changing. So you come here once and the next time you visit, it will probably look very different. But I'm always moving stuff around. So even in LA, when I was in a studio apartment, you know, I would change out my dining chair for my desk chair and then move the dining chairs into the living room. Like I'm just always moving stuff around. So when I find a new piece that I fall in love with, I just find a way to make it work and fit it in here somewhere. Off of this guest bedroom, we have this hallway. And one thing I love in here is this built-in bookshelf. So this is actually original to the house as well. This used to be all mirrored, which felt very 80s to me. I did not like it. So I actually just grass cloth this myself. Add a little, again, a little texture, a little color in here, and then styled these shelves with some of my favorite pieces. But in through this hallway is what I use as kind of a makeshift office slash we have another little guest bedroom for when it is needed. And in here, I went with this really cool, it's actually called Trinket Gold is the color of the paint color. And because we have these boarded walls in here, every drapery panel, anything I brought in here was just always feeling kind of like disrupted. So I thought, you know what, why not make these tonal? And I matched this color like as best I could with fabric, which they ended up being almost identical. So I did a totally tonal drapery panel with the wall color here. So this desk is a favorite of mine. It's by Bunny Williams. I love lacquered furniture. I think it's so proper and beautiful. And we layered this in with a great jute rug, which I love. And this is actually an antique bed frame. So this was my great grandfather's bed frame. It was passed down to my parents. This was my childhood bed when I grew up. It sat in storage for years and years. And then when we moved back, my mom asked if we needed it for anywhere, so I used it in here. Again, I did pretty neutral bedding in here, paired it with one of my lumbar pillows in a really dramatic fabric. And then I wanted to add a little bit of an old world element in here. So I have this kind of very traditional piece of art framed in this very proper gold frame that I think just kind of picks up well with the rest of the tones in here. Again, in this space, we kind of have these centered windows, which make balancing everything a little bit of a challenge. But so I chose to do these kind of fun, abstract pieces on either side to help balance it out. And then again, surprise, surprise, lots of coffee table books layered in here just to add a little bit of warmth. But yeah, so I use this room sometimes to meet clients, take phone calls, go through fabric samples. And it's just a nice little cozy room. And then it does double if we do ever have an extra guest that needs to stay here. It's great to have an extra little bed. As a Scorpio, fall and Halloween are my absolute favorite holidays. But I love decorating no matter what the occasion is. So every autumn I come in and I layer lots of pumpkins, mums, and these terracotta jack-o'-lanterns onto our front steps. I love having these nice big bluestone front steps, so we have plenty of room for all of this. We throw a big Halloween party every year. I usually decorate this in September just because I'm getting excited, but I love to just embrace each season and fall especially. So I like to go all out, add lots of pumpkins, and this year I did a little bit more of a neutral color palette out here, but I was inspired when I saw these at the farmer's market with this color that was very similar almost to our new kitchen cabinets. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna dive into that and go with mainly that color scheme. But yeah, every season I come out here, layer different things in. In the spring, I'll do lots of like hydrangeas and tulips out here. At Christmas, I do garland all wrapped around the house. But this porch we rebuilt it. The original porch, actually, a little bit of a scary fact. So this whole section of this house right here, we realized after we moved in, we were told by a structural engineer that it did not have a proper foundation. So we had to rip the porch off and they had to put in foundational support underneath. But we kept, these are the original rails, iron rails to the house. So I kept these original rails and then we rebuilt this to feel again like something as true to the age of the house as possible. Thinking about what home means to me is a really interesting question because one, our house is constantly changing. I work from home and I have clients here all the time. We are very social. We have friends here all the time. So to me, this house is also kind of like a marketing canvas for me to show the possibilities of what can be done in a home. And I think as designers, it's fun to kind of like experiment with your own home because you can take certain risks that clients maybe would not take. I have so many people that come in here that say, you know, this isn't my style, but it's so you, and I love it and I can appreciate it. And to me, there's no better compliment because your home should reflect who you are. And I always tell clients, it's a lot like getting dressed in the morning. You know, we all have a pair of jeans, we all have a white t-shirt, but it's how we style that and how we accessorize those pieces that make it our own. And that's how I feel in this house. I have accessories and artwork from every time period, every corner of the globe, you know, every color palette, anything you can imagine. To me, it's all about those pieces that speak to me and jump out to me, and how I can layer those in to be cohesive in an overall style. And like I said, I'm a very warm, cozy, you know, fall and winter are my favorite season. I love having the fireplace going. I love having mood lighting, and I always want my house to feel warm and cozy. Here in North Carolina, we have beautiful greenery, evergreens, pine trees, oak trees all around us. So color-wise and design-wise, I like to bring those elements inside and make it feel like this is, you know, an earthy, natural house, but that still feels contemporary and unique.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.